Welcome to another Build Day TV episode. I'm Alistair Cook, and we're starting a really exciting new series in this video. This is our first video where we connect to the Oracle Cloud infrastructure, the Oracle Public Cloud Service, and we're working on a really fun project where we're going to deploy some vSphere and see what it's like connecting the Oracle vSphere solution back to our on-premises environment. This is part of our collaboration with the CTO advisor. Joining me in this collaboration and doing the actual hard work part is Tom Green. Good morning, Tom. How are you today?
Morning, Alistair. I'm doing great.
You're, of course, not in the morning. It's just me that's in the morning here in New Zealand. You're over in Florida, and so it's your afternoon. Although it's your Friday afternoon rather than a Saturday morning for me.
Have a good Saturday morning. Hopefully we'll get through and you can have some cartoon time after this.
Yeah, or maybe some nap time.
Oh.
So we're going to start, as we always do on public cloud, or always seem to do, with building some network. How does the private networking part work on Oracle?
So on Oracle, the network is the backbone and the basis where you build everything from instances into the software-defined data center. It's really the first place that you start. In Oracle, there's a hamburger button in this corner, and this is the way to bring out the menu to find anything. It's always present. You can click it and you can navigate around the entire infrastructure. As you can see, this very feature rich. There's a lot of stuff to dive into, and there are quite a few menus that you can go through. If you're going to start with networking and you want to find it through the menu, you can go in and click into the Virtual Cloud Networks section. However, if hamburgers aren't your thing, you don't want to go through all these different options, there's a search bar. Anything that you could find through the menus or through links is available in the search bar. So if you just type you even start just typing Virtual Cloud Networks, Virtual Cloud or Network, there's a link right under Services.
So I'm old-fashioned and I tend to go with menus, but I'm learning that using that search is a much quicker way to find things a lot of the time.
Yeah, I prefer menus too, especially when I'm just starting out, just trying to orient myself to everything available. However, when you're switching context very quickly, the search bars is definitely the way to go.
And of course, we've come across our first hangover here. There's already an existing network, and we did try and delete that, but it seems that there's a bit of complexity to deleting a network that's been connected to a vSphere environment, because as usual, we've practiced this, we've seen what it's like to build out, so you don't have to watch all of our mistakes, but you can see there was a little complexity here where we tried to get rid of the dry run network, and we have to escalate and find out what the process is for cleaning that up.
Yep, there's a lot going on underneath the covers, so the teardown is as complex as the setup, it seems. We
certainly learned some things already that we should have done earlier in the teardown process. So we'll log a support call and that'll get cleaned up later. But right now, let's go and create this virtual cloud network.
Okay. So as everything, whenever you're working through a GUI, it all starts with a click. You click on to create a virtual cloud network. We'll also be calling these VCNs throughout. It's the acronym, and it's referenced a couple of times in different places through the interface. So you always want to start out with a name. Since we're in association with the CTO advisor, we're going to call it CTO, and we're in Oracle Cloud, so we're going to call it CTOA for CTO advisor OCI. That will carry through for a lot of the naming as you go on. So you'll see that a lot. So you want to make sure you name it something descriptive. You don't just call it cat or dog or whatever. It needs to make some sort of sense.
And although we're primarily going to be deploying a vSphere environment with this networking isn't just for the vSphere environment. This is a wider networking that we're creating here.
Right. Yeah. So as you're getting started and we're clicking, there is some design work that has to be done before you do this. If you're working with an architect, as we were working with one who has already created a network design, you have to take that into account. And on top of that, because Oracle Cloud VMware Service has NSXT attached to it, we have to consider overlay versus underlay, and how are we going to route traffic into the NSX overlay without getting it confused trying to go into the underlay networks that are hosting our traditional OCI jump boxes and other environment, and also the ESXi host and vCenter server and so on are installed into the underlay.
So we're going to need to be able to carve out of the CIDR block both the overlay network and the underlay network. So all of the layers need to come into the CIDR block of our VCN.
Right. So with that said, CIDR notation is not something I necessarily do on the top of my head on a Friday afternoon. So I've got a handy dandy CIDR to IPv4 address translator. Using ipaddressguide.com. It's very, very easy and simple to do. So we know from our architecture topology that our range is 10.255.0.0/19. So that's where we're going to start and just look at everything. So we have this long list. It goes all the way from 0 to 31 as the 0.0 all the way to 10.255.31.255. That's too much. We don't want to be able to just expose all of that because, as we were saying, the overlay is going to be part of that range as well. So if we take this down to a 22-bit, it takes us to 0.3. So in our topology and to match our on-premises environment, we know that we want to start at 10.255.8.255. We can give ourselves a little more address space if we in the range. When you're setting up the VMware solution, they ask for a subset of your VPC to be dedicated, and they suggest a /22. Which, if we go all the way down to here, that gives us enough for VMware, but then we don't have any extra space. As we were saying, we want to include VMware, we want to include some OCI instances, and also the overlay. So we need to back that up a little bit. Perfect. We're starting at 10.255.8.0 in our overlay network. And so this will give us enough room for VMware, and it will give us enough room for OCI instances.
Okay, so the overlay doesn't lie inside the VCN. Only the underlay network lives in the VCN. Yeah,
that is how we've had it designed.
Okay.
And it works pretty well for simplicity and routing, or make it more simple to do the routing and keep track of.
And so this CIDR range is the vSphere management plus any attached Oracle environment, but at the actual virtual machines that we're running on top of the vSphere environment won't be inside this CIDR range.
That's correct. So I'm just going to copy and paste that into the CIDR block. I'm going to leave the DNS resolution as default to just go through this. And like that, we have our VCN created. It's just a couple of clicks and a little bit of design work you have to do ahead of time, and we can start carving out our subnets.
So we've defined the overall network, and now we're going to carve that out into pieces that can be used for the Oracle side components as well as the VMware infrastructure components.
Right. So we're going to start with creating the jump box. The great thing about the Oracle VMware solution is that it will go in, it'll make all the route table and subnets that it needs for itself as you click through that. And you don't have to worry about doing that or even knowing how to do it. So right now we actually have enough infrastructure created to launch a software-defined data center. Why don't we go ahead and kick that off? That's the fun stuff, right?
Let's do that in another video. Let's just take a little bit more of a look around the networking in this video.
Okay.
So let's, one of the things I can see on the left side is we've got route tables and we've got security groups and security lists and those kinds of configurations. So in this video, we'll take a bit more of a poke around that.
Okay.
But we will, in the next video, we'll go and deploy that vSphere solution. Now that we've got the vCloud network configured, we need to start using it. So I guess we need some more things in here. What else do we need inside this network?
So we're going to need to create a subnet that's going to be the public subnet for our jump hosts. Before we can really get in, before there's any connectivity back to the CTO advisor data center, there we'll need a jump host in order to create our VMware, or to set up our different resources inside the VMware infrastructure.
So we need something to be able to manage the vSphere before we've connected it to our on-premises existing environment.
Yep, that's right.
All right, how do we go about that one?
All right, so we're starting out inside the created VCN that was created in earlier.
Just a few seconds ago.
Yeah, a few seconds ago. Through magic, it's a few seconds ago. And so we've created that. We need to make a few adjustments. We need to create a new subnet in order to install the jump host into. And we will need to create an internet gateway to get it out to the internet, and then modify some route tables to make sure everybody knows how to communicate. So first things first, we're going to create a new subnet. For the name of the subnet, we're going to call this CTOA, as is our naming convention in this project. We're going to call it public. Sounds good. The CIDR block for this, we're going to just keep it simple and use a /24. You never know, we may have a ton of stuff that goes into the public subnet at some point. 10.255 is our range. And we're going to do 4.0/24. So this subnet is within our VCN CIDR block, which includes the ESXi host, vCenter, all of the infrastructure parts of VMware. And it's also, like as we said, we're going to include the Oracle environment in there too. And so it is not, go ahead.
Just below this range, so this isn't the bottom of the range for the vCloud network, but you may have seen that we're in parallel as of recording this video, we're also recording the video about deploying the vSphere environment. And that vSphere environment lives in that section below the subnet. This is why we're not starting at 255.0 for our jump host.
Yeah, correct. So the ESXi hosts live at 255.0, and then other components live underneath of that. So 255.4.0 is the first available address space. We're going to choose a route table. The default route table is going to work for our uses. There's other VMware specific ones. We're just going to choose the default for this one. It's a public subnet. You can choose a security list. We're going to choose the default security list.
So this is a firewall around the subnet?
Yes, so that'll add rules into the subnet for what can come in and what can go out. And we'll investigate the default security list here in a moment.
Cool.
All right, so we've got the subnet created. We can go ahead and deploy a jump host in there if we wished, but there's still going to be some more configuration that we would need to do before that we could jump into the jump host. First and foremost, we don't know how to get to the internet at this moment. So we have to tell OCI and tell the subnet we just created how to get to the internet. Before we do that, we need to create an internet gateway. So this will allow traffic to be able to route out into the internet. We're going to call this CTOA IAG for internet gateway. That's all of the configuration you can do. Just name it and go about your business.
So the internet gateway is going to handle all of the network traffic coming out of our vCloud network to the internet and back in again if we allow that.
Yep. So that gives us a route out to the public internet. Soon we'll have a route into the private subnet whenever we get that connected. And from there, we're going to go into the route tables. As you'll remember, we chose the default route table for the subnet. So we're going to go in there and look at that. And there are no routing rules at this time. So if you deployed it, it can't there won't be any way for the server to communicate. So we're going to click on Add a Route Rule to create a new rule. It has a little pop-in menu from the side. And there's many different targets that you can choose. If you're doing a connection back to an on-premises data center, you can choose a dynamic routing gateway. For our purposes, we're trying to get up to the internet, so we're just going to choose internet gateway. We're going to say, if you don't know what to do, go send it to the internet.
Interesting that the first thing that you get to choose is what type of thing this router is going to go out through, rather than the destination. I'm used to specifying the destination first and then the target.
Yeah, so
there it is, target type first.
And that's kind of convenient, because you can make sure that you are going to the right place before you start typing. It's pretty straightforward like that.
Right, and that gives us a last resort route to go to the internet gateway.
Yep. So we have the route rule. We have an internet gateway. We have a route rule. And we're going to look at the security group or security list that was put on there as the default security list. And so by default, in a OCI virtual network, anything can do SSH into the stuff in that subnet if you created a public and using a default rule. But that's about it. And you can ping.
So you can ping, but only from within the vCloud network. You can't ping from the internet.
Correct. So we're going to have to add a new rule that says you can RDP into this network, or else we wouldn't be able to jump into a Windows jump box.
So we're going to use a Windows machine for our jump host.
Yes. So we want to have the GUI. We want to use the Windows tools. So the source for this, we're going to say the internet is 3389 RDP. So we can say it's RDP from the internet.
So this allows RDP to enter the subnet.
Yes.
From anywhere.
Yep. So now the RDP can come in. We have a way out to the internet. So I think that we have configured the network successfully to be able to do a jump host.
All right. Well, let's deploy that jump host Windows machine.
All right. So the jump host is going to be a virtual instance. So we're in the networking, so we need to navigate over to the instances. So we can do so either by clicking on this hamburger again and pulling out our handy dandy menu, going to compute, and clicking on instances through that menu. Or if you don't want to do that, you can just type instances and get to that through the search bar. So we are in this compartment, and the compartment has a bunch of different resources in it. So as you can see, we have our running instances are our ESXi hosts that are currently being deployed. So we're going to create a new instance. So clicking on the create new instance, you name it, and the name is going to be CTOA jump host. You need to choose your operating system. There's a number of different images from partners, Oracle-based. We're going to just choose a Windows Server 2019 standard. And we've read all the Microsoft terms and services, of course. Everyone's read those.
Multiple times.
Yep. So we get to choose our availability zone. Our VMware infrastructure is building in availability zone A. So we're going to stick there for now.
Stay close to it.
Yeah, stay close. No have any latency going around. And in Oracle Cloud, the size of your virtual instance is a shape. So you get to choose what shape that you are using. We're going to be using a virtual machine. We're going to be using a virtual machine based off of Intel. And from there, because we chose Windows, we chose the availability zone, there are a number of selections. We can choose 6 different shapes. Because this is a jump host, one CPU and 15 gig of memory is going to be fine.
It'll be plenty for it.
Yeah, but it can go all the way up to 24 CPU and 320 gig of memory if you're deploying a database or really want to make a very big jump host for some reason. So we're going to select that shape. The compartment, which is the overall account in which everything is deployed in, is fine. We chose the virtual cloud network that we just created. We're going to choose a subnet. So we created a public subnet for this jump host, but we also could deploy something into the private subnet that is created in there for VMware. Here's where we can choose to have a public IP address assigned. We're going to do that. We're not going to do encryption on this. We're going to create.
So we got to choose the CPU family and size.
Yes.
In there. And I saw that we could resize the boot volume. That could be quite useful.
We're going with the default boot size for this one because it's a jump box. There's not going to be a whole lot to worry. But if you wanted to extend that size, then yeah, you could click that menu and make that bigger. And now we wait.
The other thing I saw was our subnet is regional, so it's across all of the Ashburn location, and that's a nice capability to have.
Yes, it's not. It can be dedicated to just the availability zone, or you can have it span. So that is actually very, very handy. And the work request is in progress, so it'll take about 10 minutes or so for it to go from this screen to fully deployed and able to be logged in.
Well, we'll get Jeffrey to magic us through that time and teleport to when the instance is ready to go. Thank you, Jeff. Time has passed. We have a running instance. I guess we should try and connect to it.
Sure. Whenever you have a public instance, the Oracle Cloud interface gives you the IP and a nice little copy button, so it'll copy it in for you. I'm going to open up Windows Remote Desktop Connection. I'm going to paste that in. We're going to connect. So I guess it's time to go do some troubleshooting.
Go troubleshoot.
All right, we'll close that out for now. So whenever we created this, we put it into a subnet.
Mm-hmm.
There's a link to that subnet right here. So I've clicked onto that. We have a security list, a route table, and it's got DHCP, but that's not, I don't think DHCP would be causing any issue right here.
Yeah, I would have thought it was a route table or a security firewall issue.
Yeah, so we're going to start with the route table. Route table is saying the gateway of last resort is our internet gateway. So that
looks valid.
Yeah, it looks right to me. So we'll click the back button. Let's look at the security list. This could be our issue. It's not part of the solution, at least.
Yeah.
So we're saying 3389 can go in for all.
So you put the 3389 in the source rather than the destination.
Yep, there we go. Should we put it in the source and the destination?
No, because the source port will be a high port number.
Yeah. So there you go. So it goes to show.
Watch what you're doing in the console.
Yep. Read before you type, kids. Read before you type. We're going to go back to our instance. Type instances in our search bar. The reason we're going back to this instead of just trying to connect in is because I don't have the password either. So try this and see if that's going to do it. Hey, look at there.
That's better.
It helps whenever you get that order correct. So we popped in, we can enter our password.
So the default user ID is OPC.
Yeah, so and that is the default user throughout everything, really.
Mm-hmm. So
I ran into that, and we'll see that in the future when we're looking at VMware stuff. Is they put OPC as the default user for many things.
I guess that stands for Oracle Public Cloud.
I would assume. I haven't got it documented that I see, but that's a very
seems logical,
very
even
good.
if it's not true.
Yeah. So there's copying out of a website and pasting into RDP is not working for me. It's going to make me see if we can format this correctly. It's the default password that gets changed. Encoding, that's right. All right, so copy and paste isn't working for me through Windows. We're going to get some fun screen time of artisanally hand-typed. Is that a zero or a
this
colon?
default user ID, though, would only use until we could join the jump host to our Active Directory or set up our own user IDs on here, because we don't really want to be using a generic user ID.
That is correct.
Yeah.
So password must be changed. And this you have to be very careful because they want a very long password. They want to make sure that it's very secure.
Which is important because we've chosen not to even obscure the TCP port, and we're allowing RDP from anywhere on the internet. Probably
Yes.
in a production deployment, you'd be a little more restrictive, and maybe once we've established a private side network connection, we'd remove this access from the internet.
Yeah, that would that'd probably be wise, because once you're able to connect from your on-premises network, you don't really need to connect to it from a coffee shop somewhere, or you would have a VPN to do so. So I'm going to type in a very long password. We're going to...
So now we're connected into that jump host inside the OCI. Can you just open up the network control panel and confirm up the IP address that this Windows machine has?
So it has 10.255.4.2.
Right, so it's happily sitting inside the subnet that we created earlier.
Yep.
So in this video, we've gone from having no networking inside the Oracle Cloud infrastructure to having a network that we chose, broken up by a subnet, connected to the internet with a Windows instance inside that subnet unavailable from the internet. It's quite a lot done in a fairly brief period of time. As usual on public cloud, the actual deployment of this underlying infrastructure is fast.
Yeah, it's just a few clicks and you go. If you're used to GUIs, it's that, and they do have a API and command line, so you can even do it programmatically if you choose.
And when you did this for the very first time, if I remember rightly, the biggest problem was that copy and pasting of passwords.
Yeah, you need to make sure that your passwords are working right, and I think it's a setting inside my remote desktop. Yeah, it's a problem in the chair, not in the cloud. So you want to make sure, just as again, when you're deploying everything, you just want to make sure that you have the right subnet, the right CIDR, and make sure that you put in the security list correctly, or else you won't be able to remote in.
So there's going to be a lot of work with the networks team to make sure that fits together, particularly since later on we're going to connect this network back into the CTO Advisor data center in Chicago.
Yes. Yes, you want to make sure that you're in talks with your network team early and often whenever you're setting up this environment.
Cool. Well, I think that's enough for this particular video. Let's close it out there at having created this network inside the Oracle Cloud infrastructure. In the next video, Tom's going to show us how to connect back to our on-premises network using a Megaport connection from OCI back into that Chicago data center. So stay tuned, come back and subscribe to the channel on YouTube, like, of course, and ask us questions as well. Ask questions in the comments and we can try and address those in future videos. So thanks very much for joining me, Tom.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Stay tuned for more great content on the Build Day TV channel.